We'll try to get as much as we can in during this half day, 9 until 12. And then, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to break at the end of the day until Wednesday. So Monday is a holiday. Tuesday, we're not able to meet. So we are going to, we're all going to get a rest from this, rest up, get strong for the next installment. We're still on track to finish during August. So, but we're taking all of this into account, and we will, at the end of today's date, recess until Wednesday. And I'll give you repeat my reminder to avoid all media, press, and conversation with others. You'll doubtless be in contact with people curious about what you've been up to, and naturally you'll tell them the whole thing some other time. But let's get down to business. What will you be presenting first? Mr. Miata, are you again leading a reading?
Yes, Your Honor. So I know on our schedule we have Zena Simmons, but we're going to take a reading out of order. We're going to read Dr. Charles Harvey. His testimony was given during the trial at Galveston on October 1st, 2003. If I can have the transcript for Mr. Harvey's testimony, or Dr. Harvey's testimony, marked for identification, thank you, as Court's Exhibit 10, I believe.
Is that right? We had
yes.
Hodges, Ogden, Hanley, 6.
That is correct. 10. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Court's Exhibit 10.
And the prosecutor in Galveston, Kirk Sistrunk, that testimony will, or that portion will be read by Wendy Pham. The witness, Dr. Charles Harvey, his testimony will be read by Cameron Young, and the part of Dick DeGuerin will be read by, I guess, Dick DeGuerin.
Excellent.
The part of the court, Judge Susan Chris, will be read by Abaraj Girtharan? Sorry, thank you. Common spelling.
All right. Which was, I'm a little bit confused. I thought that Hodges was 6. Court 6? What was Court 6?
I believe the court's exhibits have all been transcripts.
Yes, correct, yes. I'm just checking, I'm just double checking courts. Avena was, Avena, I don't have Avena here. 6, 7 is, okay, 7 is Dillman, 8 is Hodges. Not Hodges, Ogden, no, okay, Hodges was 7. The Hodges was not.
Just a warning for the jury. There are some
Hodges
graphic
was
photographs that are a part of this this testimony, so they should just be prepared for that.
Okay, just a moment. 6. Hodges was, just a moment. So Hodges was, I'm a little confused. Hodges was live. Hodges was red? Right, that's not, Hodges was live. So, Dillman, let's say 7, Ogden was 8, Hanley was 9. Okay, Harvey's 10, got it. Thank you. Yes, thank you for the trigger warning. This is a testimony of a deputy medical examiner?
Yes.
I see, so naturally. All right, you may proceed.
Charles M. Harvey, M.D., was called as a witness by the state and first been duly sworn, assumed to the witness stand, and upon examination testifies as follows. Sir, would you state your full name for the record, please?
Charles Minor Harvey, MD.
And how are you currently employed?
I am Deputy Medical Examiner for Galveston County.
And how long have you been employed with Galveston County at the Medical Examiner's Office?
Since 1999.
And where were you before you came to Galveston in 1999?
I was in Phoenix.
And in what capacity there, sir?
I was in private practice in Phoenix for a short time, and I was prior to that with the Medical Examiner's Office for Maricopa County.
And how many years then have you been in the medical examiner profession?
17 years.
And what is your training and background in order to qualify you for that position?
I received a Bachelor of Science from the University of Texas at Austin in 1971, and then in 1975, I received an MD degree from the University of Texas Health Science Center at San Antonio. I followed the medical education with a residency program, 2 years of combined anatomic and clinical pathology residency at Baptist Memorial Hospital in San Antonio, and 2 years of combined anatomic and clinical pathology at St. Paul Hospital in Dallas. Following that, I joined the faculty at the Texas College of Osteopathic Medicine. I sat for board exams and received certification in anatomic and clinical pathology in 1981. And in 1983, I joined the medical examiner's office in Tarrant County and worked under Dr. Pirwani. I sat for board examinations in forensic pathology and received board certification in 1992. I'm a member of the National Association of Medical Examiners, the American Academy of Forensic Sciences, the College of American Pathologists, and the American Society of Clinical Pathologists.
You have been board certified in forensic pathology since 1992, correct?
Correct.
I want to direct you back to, have you testified in courts before for Galveston County, the state of Texas?
Yes, I have.
Has that been on few or many occasions?
Many occasions.
I want to take you back to September of 2001. Were you employed in the same capacity at that time here at the medical examiner's office in Galveston?
At that time, I was the chief medical examiner.
And your responsibilities and duties at that time, briefly?
To make sure that the office was capable of fulfilling the responsibilities for examination of unnatural and violent deaths in Galveston County.
Specifically, in September then, do you recall being called out to the scene, Channel View, in Galveston, Texas?
I certainly do.
And do you remember approximately what time you might have arrived at that scene?
It was somewhere between 8 and 9 o'clock in the evening.
It was already dark, is that correct?
It was already dark.
And what observations, if any, did you make when you first got there regarding your reason for being there?
It certainly was a great deal of official activity that was going on out there. I was shown reasonably early on the recovered torso, and they were in the process of recovering the extremities.
The first thing you were directed to do then was the torso?
I think so.
And was that while it was in the water or out of the water?
It was out of the water and lying on an open black body bag.
And were you there for the remainder of the evening while the rest of the body parts were found?
I was.
Did you do any type of external examination on the torso out there before you got back to the medical examiner's office?
Yes, I did look at the torso.
Can you share with the jury, please, what you were looking for and what you saw?
One of the things that you were looking for is liver mortis. It's very difficult with just the torso and no extremities to assess whether there's any muscle stiffness or rigor mortis. I was looking to see what state of decomposition we were in, and it was very early at that point. There was just venous marbling on the surface.
Tell us, please, what liver mortis is.
Liver mortis is the settling by gravity of red cells after the circulation is stopped. The red cells are particulate, and they can come under the influence of gravity, and they can go to the lowest area of the body and settle out.
And did you see liver mortis present on that torso?
I did.
Is liver mortis something that occurs over minutes or hours or what length of time?
Liver mortis starts, I've seen instances when liver mortis actually starts in and around the time that death actually occurs, but that's pretty unusual. People are in very poor circulation shape. In general, it generally starts to be noticeable by about 2 hours, more noticeable at 4 hours, and it is at that early stage still displaceable. If you put pressure on the skin, you can create an area of power where the red cells that are settling down can be pushed out of the capillaries. It becomes fixed somewhere between 12 and 18 hours after death.
Did you make any determination at the scene that night or whether or not the liver mortis that you saw was fixed or not fixed?
It was fixed.
And again, that indicates to you, what can you learn from that? Just that it was fixed?
That the body has been deceased for at least 12 hours.
You had mentioned decomposition is something that you can also look for. You said the word marbling. Can you explain what you mean by marbling?
Yes, a deceased body undergoes degenerative change that is part of a natural process of change. There are bacteria that leave the intestinal tract and go usually via the vascular system and travels throughout the body. And one of their byproducts is a substance called hydrogen sulfide, and it's a bad-smelling thing. And as it travels along these veins, it produces a darkened color to the vein. And so you see a pattern in the skin surface of darkening of veins that are irregularly stretched out across the surface in what we in the trade call arborizing or tree-like. And that darkening is subsequently called marble or marbling of the skin. And it's one of the earliest signs of decompositional changes.
At that time, when you're doing the initial viewing of the torso, do you have any idea as to cause of death?
No.
Regarding decomposition, what type of variable factors play into a rate of decomposition of a body, whether it's faster or slower?
The things that affect the speed with which decomposition occurs in the body are temperature primarily, and the length of time that the body has been deceased. Colder temperatures retard the process. Other factors that affect that are whether there is an active infection that's going on in the body at the time that death occurs. That increases the speed that the decomposition occurs.
Again, from your initial examination then at the scene, were you able to make any type of estimate as to how long the body perhaps had been in the water?
I don't think that the body had been immersed in the water longer than 24 hours.
And that's based on what, doctor?
The fact that there was minimal decomposition that was present.
Well, does the torso floating in water affect the rate of decomposition? The body parts floating in the water also? Or is there going to be a rate of temperature based on whatever temperature of the water may be?
Water temperature is going to be an important aspect of the determination.
And if the water temperature is lower than, say, the human body temperature, say 70-degree range or 75 degrees or something like that, is that something you think cool enough that would retard decomposition?
I think it would retard it.
Doctor, I'm showing you what's been marked for identification purposes as States Exhibits 429 and 430. Do these fairly and accurately represent the scene at the time that you were there that you testified to?
They do.
Okay, Your Honor, the state tenders to the defense and offers 429 and 430.
They are admitted.
Doctor, I will stand on this side of you and showing you 430. Can you tell us what 430 shows? Which side of the body?
It shows the front side of the upper portion is the front part we are looking at, the right side of the body over here.
Okay, and you talked about liver mortis. Is liver mortis displayed in this photograph?
The edges of it have produced this pinkish purple coloration at the side, and in this area, that's really the hollow in the back.
Okay, and that liver mortis, I noticed in your report you said that is, I believe you indicated ill-defined. Is that, in your opinion, that's ill-defined liver mortis?
Yes, it's not striking, and it's not tremendously present. I see bodies and other autopsies that have very striking purplish discoloration.
Does State's Exhibit 430 also show the marbling that you indicated?
Yes, it does.
Okay, and could you point where the marbling is?
There is this branching pattern of darkening that's on this vein down here by the groin.
Okay. I am now showing you what's been introduced as State's Exhibit 429, and again, do you see marbling or decomposition that you testified to?
I do. It's much more prominent on this other side.
Okay, and liver mortis on the left side of the body here, yes or no?
Yes.
Okay, may I publish these to the jury?
Yes.
Based on the photographs that have been introduced, doesn't that indicate he was at least on his back from 12 to 18 hours for that event to occur?
It does.
Does it tell you any time about when he was placed on his back after death? How much time passed by after death before he was placed on his back? Do I need to rephrase the question?
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Okay, hypothetical case. I am shot. I lay somewhere for 20 or 30 minutes on my stomach. I am later turned over and my body parts are removed. I am turned over and lay on my back for 18 hours. My question is, does the liver mortis that you see set in those State's exhibits indicate when after death he was placed on his back? Do you know the position of the body at the time of death based on where liver mortis is?
Yes, you can. What I would like to try to convey here, I think, is that...
May I interrupt you?
Yes?
What does 430 tell you about Morris Black at the time of death? How he was positioned when he was killed?
I cannot tell you that.
Well, that's my question.
Okay.
I am not trying to be argumentative, but I want to be sure we understand each other. Does State's Exhibit 429 tell you anything about the position of Morris Black at the time of his death?
No.
What does it tell you? Correct me if I am wrong. Is that at some point he was on his back for some 12 to 18 hours for liver mortis to set it. Is that correct?
And to become fixed, yes.
And become fixed?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. Was there any identification identifying who these body parts actually came from? Who they were, who was at the scene that you recall?
There was not.
Okay. Did you participate in the collection of subsequent body bags for the various pieces of Mr. Black in them?
Yes, I did.
Okay, and what was done after those body bags were collected at the scene?
There were body bags collected at the scene that were placed within fresh, or not body bags. The trash bags that contained the limbs were retrieved from the water and placed within fresh garbage bags that they went out and purchased in order to preserve the integrity of the exterior of the body bags, and as they were recovered from the water. These were then placed into two separate body bags. The torso went into one body bag, and then the extremities and the bags that were recovered were placed in another body bag, and both of those body bags were then sealed.
Is that the normal procedure for your office when you have a recovery like this?
That is.
Did you have any other people out there helping you in that recovery and I guess subsequent transport to your office?
There were a number of people helping. There was law enforcement and the dive recovery teams that were retrieving the bags and the limbs. The transport service was there to put them into the body bags, to seal the body bags. And then Sergeant Jones and the transport service people were with me when we later opened and examined things later that evening.
Did you open up any bag at the scene where the body parts were collected?
I did not. I palpitated the outside to make sure that we had something that felt it was an extremity and satisfied me. That's what we were looking at. And then we bagged them up and took them over to the morgue.
Do you recall from your notes or report the approximate time that might have been that you were back at the medical examiner's office with these bags?
We were back in the morgue on the 30th of September at 9:30 at night.
Did you begin your external examination of the body and the body parts at that time?
Yes.
And where did you begin? With what part?
Well, the first is to open up the body bag and to take photographs as they are, and then start to work through the layers and move on down.
When you say layers, let me interrupt you briefly. How were these individual body parts wrapped? Do you recall?
There were 3 concentric trash bags, each of them showing a gray exterior and a black interior that went around each other. There was, the body part, and there was a bag. And there was a bag around that, and then there was another bag around the outside of that.
And was every body part contained in that same fashion then?
It was.
Were there other things found other than body parts in those bags? Do you recall?
There were.
Okay, can you give us an idea of what other types of things were contained within there?
Well, there was a pile of sand in one of them. There was a store receipt. There was a piece of cardboard. There was a wrapping item from a bow saw. There was a newspaper that had an address on it. There was flip-flop shower shoes. There were other things that were present as well.
Did you photograph those other items?
I did.
Do you recall specifically photographing the store receipt you mentioned?
I do.
Dr. Harvey, I'm showing you what's been marked for identification purposes as State's Exhibits 426, 427, and 428. Do you recognize this?
I do.
Does this accurately reflect what you have given previous testimony to regarding the receipts at the time you viewed them?
It certainly does.
Your Honor, the state offers and tenders 428, 427, 426, and offers into evidence.
No objection. They're all, we have a little technical thing that I need to discuss.
Let me just slow down.
There's nothing Mr. Milius can't fix.
When can I start? Okay. Dr. Harvey, I'm showing you now what's been introduced 428. And could you read into the record, please, the items that this receipt shows were purchased? Can you read them from here?
Trash bags, True VA, drop cloth, 4-foot X, and then it's blurred.
Okay, moving it up just a little bit, are you able to or were you able, upon examination, to determine the date that is associated with this purchase?
It's blurred enough here, so it's really hard to tell. I can tell there's a 01 year, and I don't know exactly what the actual day is.
You were not able to determine an actual date, were you?
I think I was when I first looked at it. My reported date of the case was 9/29 of 2001.
And the time? Were you able to discern a time?
This is clearly a 1 and a 17. The question mark is what is this right here. I think if you look at this very closely, you can see that this comes over here and comes down. It looks now to be more compatible with a 2.
Well, did you note something in your report?
I did.
And what did you note in your report?
In my report, I thought it said 6 instead of 2.
You thought it was 1/6?
Yes.
Okay. Directing you to States 426, are you able to tell the name of the store that's associated with this purchase?
That's Chalmers, and then HA, and that's a little unclear.
Okay, and again, this is in what city?
It's in Galveston.
And again, what you have already testified to.
Correct.
The contents, trash bags, true value, drop cloth,
4-foot.
and the purchase price. Are you able to tell from this?
It looks like it says $20.79 for a total.
Okay, now what you were looking at this night is what was reflected in these photographs, right?
Correct.
And showing you again States 428 is a photograph of the date again. As you look at that today, can you still not determine an exact date, or can you?
I don't think I can determine an exact date on that. It could be a 3, I'm reasonably certain we have a 9 over here for the month, 3, and then it's really blurred after that.
Okay, but you took this picture the same night you looked at it.
Correct.
Okay.
I certainly did.
Sometime in September of 2001, you agree with that?
I do.
At 12:17 in the afternoon?
Yes, sir.
Other than the limbs being severed off of the torso, Dr. Harvey, and the head being gone, did you know any particular wounds on the front torso? I'm referring you strictly to the front part of the torso. Did you note any wounds to the body?
Yes.
Okay, and could you describe those for us, please?
There's a wound to the front lower part of the abdomen that is a superficial, linear, sharp cut into the skin, level only, that appears to be produced by forces that are directed slightly downward toward the feet, if there were feet. And it has a scratch at one edge. There's also a brownish colored abrasion that is in the left groin region, 3/8 of an inch by 1/16 of an inch.
Your Honor? Sorry to interrupt. So I'm not sure how we should do it. I'm talking to Mr. Guerin about this. So the court in Galveston, after they discussed the photos, published them. He's describing what's on this photo right now. May I show it up now so it can have meaning to what he's talking about at this point, or?
That would make sense to me. Any objection to that?
Well, my recollection is that's not the way it was handled then. It was, 20 years ago, and we were holding up pictures when they were published.
Right.
They were asked to publish the photographs.
Right. So holding them up, or?
I don't know, well, of course, we have the wolf,
Yes, we do.
but,
You've got to take advantage of technology advances.
right, but I don't believe we had it then. I could be wrong, but I
Right,
just
well,
don't
we're
have
not,
any
this
recollection
is not
of using it.
necessarily a faithful historical reenactment. This is a presentation of evidence to this jury, so this jury can understand it, and we will make use of our present technology to put it up there for the jurors to look at if they would like.
One thing I recall is we just passed the photographs, and that takes a long time.
Takes a long time to pass the photograph, so we're gonna project it. Go ahead and project it, please.
In the left front corner of the chest, toward the side, there's a sharp incision. It's a 1/2 of an inch. It extends actually below the level of the skin into the subcutaneous tissue. It is a little piece of fat that is protruding from it.
Doctor, I will show you what's been identified as State's Exhibit 431, 432, and 433. You would take a look at these. Do you recognize these?
I do.
Do these accurately reflect the injuries as you noted at the time of your observation?
They do.
We tendered previously and offer States 431, 432, and 433.
No objection.
Admitted.
I'm showing you what's admitted as States 431. Can you tell us the location of that wound again and which one you are specifically referring to?
This wound is it's actually just a little bit to the left of the center of the lower abdomen. Down here is the beginning of pubic hair, and this is up at the pelvic region, and there's a little sharp cut that is very superficial. It just goes into the skin surface only. And then there's a scratch or a continuation that goes off to the side.
Did you know any healing process that had begun on that wound or not?
No, that's a fresh cut.
I'm showing you States 443. What part of the body is this?
This is the left side of the front. We're looking for this little unit right here. It's a sharp cut. It actually goes down below the white stuff here. It's the edge of the skin surface. And this little yellow nubbin is the fat that lives right below the skin surface, and it's kind of poking out through that cut.
And how did you characterize that wound?
That's a sharp incised wound.
Incised meaning?
That it is cutting on it, and it's actually longer across the surface of the skin than it is in depth and penetration.
And if Mr. Black's body was standing on the floor upright, With this wound, would it be parallel to the floor or perpendicular to the floor?
It would be parallel to the floor.
And again, this is along the left side of his body, is that correct?
That's correct.
State's Exhibit 432. Can you tell us again the location and the nature of this wound?
Yes, this is in the left groin. We're looking at this area right in here. It's got a brown, somewhat granular appearance, and it's an abrasion. It's a scraping off of the skin surface.
Consistent with what, if you have any idea?
Abrasions can occur because there's a scraping action that goes across the skin surface. It can also be from vertical impact to the skin surface.
And the same question that I asked earlier. If Mr. Black was standing upright, is this wound that is parallel to the floor or perpendicular to the floor, or are you able to give it any direction?
It is parallel to the floor.
Thank you, Doctor. Doctor, did you prepare a diagram regarding the injuries that you found on Mr. Black?
I did.
I'm showing you what's been marked for identification as State's Exhibit 501. Is that just a blow-up of your wound chart, so to speak?
It is.
And would this assist in giving location and direction of the wounds that you are going to be speaking of?
It would.
Your Honor, the State offers 501.
No objection, Your Honor.
I will try to fix it so you can keep your chair, Doctor. Again, on the front, if you can use your pen perhaps, the front torso area. You can step down if you would rather. The wound that we just looked at, just for reference location again, would you show the jury where on 501 the wounds are that you described?
The one that I labeled as number 7, just to give it a number and keep it separate from all the other wounds, is right here. It's just slightly to the left of the midline in the groin region.
And again, is that State's Exhibit 431 in the photograph?
It is.
Okay, and State's Exhibit 433, the cut?
No, cut number 1 through 9 is shown here on the front side of the upper left, of the left upper abdomen.
Just below the shoulder area a little ways.
Well, it's down below the shoulder. It's actually the lower edge of the
Left nipple?
rib cage, and it's up above the nipple region.
Up above the nipple?
It is above the nipple region, yes.
In State's Exhibit 432, the abrasion you described.
432 is the abrasion that's in the groin region. It's here.
Okay, thank you, Doctor. Other than those 3, did you note any type of bruising to the front torso?
I did not.
Let's move along to the legs. Those again were located in trash bags or not?
They were
Triple bagged?
triple bags.
If I may direct you to your part of the report addressing the left leg, did you note any type of injury, old or fresh, or any type of injury to the left leg of Mr. Black?
The left leg had evidence of an old chronic bone infection in the front part of the lower part of the leg.
And how is that infection manifesting itself?
It showed an irregular granular healing, inflamed appearance on the front part of the shin.
Is that the only injury that you saw, or should I say lingering type injury of some sort?
I believe so.
All right. Did you have a chance to make an observation of the nature of the cuts into the flesh and muscle tissue and the bone of the left leg?
I did.
Okay. And how would you characterize the cuts that surrounded the bone through the skin and the tissue? Did it appear to be smooth cuts or ragged cuts?
These are smooth cuts that appear to have been caused by a sharp instrument.
Did you have an opportunity to look at the bone of the left leg, where it was cut?
I did.
How would you describe those cuts?
That cut was in a plane, a flat surface across the end of the bone, and it contained a number of parallel ridge marks that are seen with sawing motions from a saw that has teeth in it but has a straight edge.
It's your opinion that that's what it was consistent with?
It is.
Did you take photographs of what we have just discussed?
I did.
I'm showing you what's been marked for identification purposes as 434, 435, 436, and 437. Do these accurately reflect the left leg at the time of your observations?
They do.
Tender to defense counsel and would offer those exhibit numbers, Your Honor.
We have no objection.
the way we do it and the way we did it then was they have to be admitted by the court before they're displayed to the jury.
Right. They are.
I'm handing you what's been introduced as States 434. Can you tell us what 434 shows?
434 shows the lower front portion of the shin of the left leg. It shows this chronic inflammation and infection that's going on there. Inflammation and reddish area. And there's regular scarring and contraction from the healing process. It's an old bone infection, and the bone is very close to the skin surface.
Nothing about this injury indicates anything recent. This is definitely a pre-existing condition.
That is correct.
Okay. You spoke to the nature of the cut of the skin. Would you please describe for the jury what 436 shows regarding the left femur?
This is a side view of the line of transection of the left lower leg. The skin surface right here is sharply and smoothly cut. It doesn't have any tearing, stretching irregularities, and the cut through the muscles that are there is also relatively smooth cut. There's some...
We will get to the bone, and I'm going to show you States 435, which I believe shows a heads-on view, so to speak, of the cut and the nature of the cut location of the femur. Can you describe that 435 again for us?
The skin surface is along the outside. There's a layer of fat that's directly underneath it, and these are the big muscles in the leg, and this is the cut plane flat section across the end of the femur bone.
And 437, can you describe for us a little bit better what you mean by cut plane? What does this 437 show?
It's a flat cut surface, and it has these parallel lines that come across it that are produced when a saw makes a cut across. And each time you draw the saw back and forth, it's held just a little bit differently, so it produces new lines with each cut.
Thank you, doctor. Have you performed autopsies before on bodies that have severed limbs, such as this?
Yes, I have. Most of the severed limbs that I've seen have been traumatic as a result of car wrecks and motorcycle wrecks, and people cut off in elevators that stop or miss floors.
When you say traumatic, do you get a different type of cut or a different kind of break?
You get shattering. You get shattered, irregular, oftentimes fragmented cutting that occurs with those.
Let me direct you then in your report. Let's move along to the right leg of Mr. Black, okay? Did you note any wounds on the right leg, either front right leg or the back part of the right leg on Mr. Black?
No.
Did you have an observation of the type, the nature of the cut of the skin again on the right leg?
I do.
And how would you characterize that cut through the skin and the muscle tissue?
Sharply incised. There's short, parallel, sharp incisions around a portion of the leg indicating that there is an attempt to cut and then another attempt along the same side to cut because the first cut wasn't deep enough.
In the femur of the right leg, did you know anything in particular about the condition of the femur?
It again was a flat plane transection with these parallel rill marks from the saw.
Doctor, I'm showing you what's been marked for identification purposes as States Exhibits 438 through 443. Do these accurately reflect the condition of the right leg at the time that you viewed it?
They do.
Your Honor, the state tenders 438 through 442 and would offer them into evidence. Doctor, we can't show you everything, but let me get to a couple of specifics in the interest of time. 438, just briefly, what does this photograph show?
This is an overall view of the right leg.
Okay, and States Exhibit 439 in relation to the type of severing cuts through the tissue and the skin?
Smooth cuts through the skin and muscle tissue and fat, and there's this plain transection across the end of the bone.
Were you able to get another shot of that transection of the bone from an upper or different angle?
Correct.
And I'm showing you 440 now. And could you describe what you see in States 440 on the leg?
Okay, this is a view of the upper and slightly outer edge of the bone, and it shows that there's a partial cut that goes through there because a whole series of little parallel cuts. and you're trying to saw, you grab a purchase, and if you are able to get if you are able to get it to hold in, you have a nice clean cut. But lots of time the saw skips out of that cut and it makes a parallel cut, and it even gets partially cut through on that side. And then the final cut is right here at the very end.
Okay. Is that suggestive, doctor, if you have an opinion of starting in one place and starting over again until you finally got locked in, so to speak?
That's correct.
Anything in the nature of the cuts of the skin, either on the left leg or right leg, suggests to you that an instrument like State's Exhibit 53 was used to cut through the muscle in the skin, something with wide tooth versus fine tooth?
I don't know that I'm going to be able to tell a difference between wide tooth and fine tooth. They're both going to produce rills and parallel cut marks across the end of the bone.
Here's my question. I didn't say to the bone. I said to the skin and to the muscle tissue.
I'm sorry.
Do you have an opinion as to what type of instrument was used? Would it be something along the lines with 53 or something with a finer tooth, if you have an opinion?
I think that the cut in the skin has been done with a sharp instrument with a continuous edge, not with teeth.
And I know in these photographs, at least when we look at the skin and the muscle tissue, so far at least we haven't seen any indication of jagged cuts, have we?
No, we have not.
Are you able to make a determination of whether or not the skin and the muscle was being manipulated at the time the bone was cut? If you are not, that's fine.
Other than the fact that it was cut, appears to have been cut with a sharp instrument and separated to gain access to the bone, no.
Thank you, doctor. Directing your attention to your chart, doctor, if you can. If this works, does this line on State's Exhibit 51 indicate the angle of cut that you saw, or is that just a line that you drew?
That's a line that I drew to indicate that the extremities are separated from the torso.
Based on your observation of both the left leg and right leg, do you have an opinion as to whether or not they were cut straight across or cut in angles?
I think they appear to be cut relatively straight across.
To the arms, when did you first or where did you find the arms, together or separate and apart, when you first found them?
Both the right and left arms were in a single unit of 3 concentric trash bags.
I'm showing you what's been marked for identification purposes as State's Exhibit 443. Do you recognize that?
I do.
Does that accurately reflect the condition and the state of the arms at the time you first viewed them?
It does.
Previously tendered and offered States 443.
Sorry, I know I have no objection because I just lost my place. We didn't object.
What page?
171,
I got it now.
line 21.
No objection. It's admitted then.
Can you tell the jury what we are looking at here in States 443?
Yes. The upper or topmost extremity here is the left arm. It has a piece of shirt that's attached to it, and it overlies the right arm. There's a line of transection at the proximal end.
Does that mean there's a cut where the arm hits the shoulder? Is that what you just said?
That's right.
Okay. Referring you back to your chart, doctor, did you know any wounds on the left arm in this area?
I did.
Okay. Can you describe for the jury, please, from your notes, what you saw?
There are 2 bruises that are present in the back elbow area of the arm. They're fresh and dark purple coloration.
Are those reflected in States 443? Are you able to see those two bruises in States 443?
You are.
Would you please just point them out for the jury where you are referring to the bruises on the left arm?
Here and here.
May we publish this one to the jury? Those 2 bruises, doctor, are you able to show, at least can you show in your arm in relation, or I will step up there if you would like me to, but I would like to know exactly which side, inside or outside of the arm, are those bruises. Are you able to determine from the photograph or the description in your report?
They're on the thumb side and toward the outside, but they're on the back part of the arm.
Okay, help me out, doctor. I see the thumb in States 443 clearly lying flat on the floor. Are those 2 bruises on the thumb side? Are they inside? Are they outside?
They look in this picture to be toward the inside.
Well, does the picture accurately reflect what you saw when you opened the bag?
Correct.
Okay, and when we say inside, on my arm, if my thumb, like in States 443, is lying down on the black bag, where are those bruises that are shown in the photograph?
They are on the inside of the arm in the back part.
Inside?
Yeah, that's what it looks like to me.
2 separate bruises or 1 bruise?
It looks like 2 separate bruises. They were described in the report as 2 separate bruises.
Did you measure the diameter of those individual bruises?
I did.
What's the diameter of those 2 different bruises?
One is 1 3/4 inch in diameter, and the other is 1 inch in diameter.
Does that diameter tell you anything about the nature of what might have caused the injury?
It can.
Would it be just speculation on your part as to what might have caused those 2 bruises with those diameters?
It would.
We're going to go to the right arm in your report now, doctor, okay? Did you know, first, we will look at the right arm on your chart diagram. Did you know any injuries on, I guess, the palm side here of the right arm or the outside part of the right arm?
There's a single bruise that's present on the posterior edge of the right arm.
And did you measure the diameter of that bruise, doctor?
I did.
And what was the diameter of that bruise?
It was 1 1/2 inches.
And would that be smaller or larger than the bruises on the left arm?
It's midway between the 2 sides.
Doctor, I'm showing you what's been marked for identification purposes as States Exhibits 444 and 445. Do these accurately reflect the entire length of the right arm upon your visual?
They do.
The state has tendered and would offer 444 and 445.
No objection, Your Honor.
They are admitted.
As a whole, I'm showing you 444. Describe to the jury what this shows.
This shows the entire length of the right arm. It shows a little bit of this decompositional change and marbling is present. It shows the cut across the top of the arm.
Okay, again, is that a smooth cut or a rough cut? Do you recall?
I think it had some areas of irregularities.
Okay, States Exhibit. When you say irregularity, what do you mean by that?
It's not totally smooth.
Okay, we will come back to that then. States 445, doctor.
This shows the other surface of the arm, the top surface with the hair on it, and there's a bruise that we were talking about.
Okay, and that bruise again is on the outside or the inside portion?
It looks more toward the outside.
May we publish this?
Yes.
Doctor, regarding those bruises on the both the left and right arm, are you able to make a determination of any sort as to approximate age of those bruises or how long they might have occurred before death or even if they could have been caused by an injury after death?
I think that they were too prominent to be something that occurred after death. I think that because of the reddish-purple coloration, that they are reasonably fresh. Bruises generally don't start to show the yellow discoloration until after a week of healing goes on. That's highly variable from one person to another, however.
So your opinion is that these bruises most likely occurred before death. Is that what I hear you saying?
Yes, it is.
Are you able to determine with any certainty as to whether or not they occurred at the same time or not, both the left arm and the right arm?
It depends on what caused them. They're about the right size and diameter. They could be finger impressions that are squeezing very hard into the skin surface. That can occur at the same time and still have 2 separate impressions, like in the left arm.
Again, going back to the color briefly, nothing about the color suggests that they are days apart from each other or anything like that?
No, there's not.
Dr. Harvey, on the things we have discussed so far, you have described mostly smooth cuts in the tissue. Is that correct?
Correct.
And what was your word for the type of bone cut?
A plain transection or a flat transection.
Directing you, sir, to the right arm, both the torso and the end of the right arm. Did you know any different kinds of cuts in the skin and or the bone?
There were some irregularities in the skin surface cuts. The right arm had some parallel cuts that were parallel to the line of actual transection.
Anything regarding the bone?
The bone was on the right extremity and had an area where there was an area of flatness, but it was small, 1/2 inch in width. And then the rest of it was actually fractured and broken. It had small separate pieces of bone, and they were elongated and had a pattern of fracturing that shows that there was some force that was applied to it to fracture those bones.
Dr. Harvey, I'm showing you what's been marked for identification purposes as 495, 496, and 498. Would you take a look at those to yourself, please?
Yes, sir.
Do they accurately reflect the right arm as you have just described at the time of your viewing it?
They do.
Your Honor, we tender 495, 496, and 498 to defense counsel and would offer those three. I'm showing you, Doctor, State's Exhibit 498. And could you describe the location where this photograph shows on the body? What part of the body this 498 shows?
Okay, this is the end of the torso, I believe. Yes, this is the torso side of the right side of the body.
Okay, and the right arm area in this photograph?
This is the right arm area right there.
You spoke earlier of different type of cuts. Do you see any difference or a combination of both serial and jagged cuts?
There's a smooth cutting across the top here, and then at this point they start to get irregular and torn. There's some more of that subcutaneous or the dermis that's spread out. It's the white area. It's gotten wide, and there are separations that are perpendicular to the line of transection that are present there.
You also mentioned, I believe you said, there's some type of parallel cuts on the right arm area also. I'm showing you States 496, and what does 496 show to the jury, please?
Okay, this shows a line of transection, and this is a sharp line here, but it also shows where it is cut in here, and it's parallel to the actual skin cut transection here. Then there's another sharp cut that's up above that, that's also parallel.
And that is indicative of what?
A sharp instrumentation that has produced an incision in that skin.
Okay, previous bone structure that we have shown you referred to as planar cuts. I'm showing you 495. Can you explain for the jury the nature of the cut of the bone in this photograph?
Yes, this is the end of the humerus bone. It's a smaller diameter and a thinner wall than the femur bone from the leg. This edge over here has that flat plane transection, but the rest of it is shattered and fractured and broken into various and sundry small parts and fragments.
That bone again is what bone? What's the name?
That's called the humerus.
And it was, are you describing a combination of cut and fracture? Is that what I hear you say?
I am.
If you can look again back at the photograph, how far does the cut make it through the bone? If you're able to tell, more than halfway or less than halfway?
Oh, I would estimate that about a third of the way through. It looks like maybe almost half.
And regarding the nature of the cuts on the skin and the muscle tissue, are you saying that you think that are they representative of two different instruments or just repetitive cuts of the same instrument?
And if I can refer to one of the photographs?
Yes, please.
Okay, I'm looking at the States 498, and down in this area where I talked about the ones that are perpendicular to the line of transection and exposed wider areas, that's a different type of instrumentation that has caused that. And it's not a knife edge, it's something that has produced ragged and irregular tearing in the skin surface at right angles to the axis of the extremity.
Okay, are you able to give any more detail as to what you mean it's not a knife's edge? What type of edge instrument are you referring to?
Well, this could easily have been caused by a bow saw that you showed me.
Thank you, Doctor. Directing your report, please, so we know where we are going to next, to the area of the right hand. Did you know any indications in your external examination of any type of injuries to Mr. Black's right hand?
I do.
Could you describe and characterize those injuries for us?
The right hand has a cut that is primarily on the upper back surface of the hand that goes down deep into the deep subcutaneous tissues into the fat. And it appears to be sharply incised, and it's 1 inch in length. And if I recall, I believe that this one also extends just a little bit into the palmar surface. And we might see that on the photographs when we look at that.
When you say sharply incised, tell me that in a little plainer language for me.
Well, a sharply incised wound is something I associate with a knife or a scalpel or a razor, something that produces very cleanly cut edges.
And you measured the length of those cuts?
This was an inch long.
Okay, were you able to make any type of determination as to when those injuries could have occurred, either before or after death?
No.
And what factors, if any, that you know personally with this case would have impacted your ability to make such a call?
Well, the hands had been immersed in water and had undergone a wrinkling distortion where the water swells up the skin, especially on the thicker palmar surface. We call that washerwoman hands. And in the process of soaking, it bleaches out the red blood cells from hemorrhage that's present. And I cannot tell following that exposure whether this is before or after death.
So the fact, as you testified earlier in your opinion, this body would have been in the water as long as 24 hours. You think that's what's keeping you from making a call?
Yes.
Doctor, I'm tendering to you what's been marked for identification purposes as states exhibits 446, 447, 448, and 449. Will you take a look at these to yourself and see if you recognize these?
Yes, I do.
Do these fairly and accurately reflect the condition of the right hand at the time you initially viewed it?
They do.
Your Honor, the state would tender and offer these exhibits.
The numbers are?
No objection.
446, 447, 448, and 449.
They are admitted.
Doctor, could I have you step down, please, and describe and show as best as you can to all members of the jury. I'm showing you states 448. And what does 448 show?
This shows the palmar surface of the right hand, and for all intents and purposes, this is without evidence of any real trauma that I can demonstrate on this view.
No injuries on the inside palm on the right hand then, is that correct?
Not really. There is another view that opens up the thumb. There's just a little bit of injury pattern at the tip of the index finger there.
And states exhibit 446, what does this exhibit show, this photograph?
This shows the heel of the hand and shows a complete absence of any injuries.
Again, are we looking at, which part of the hand are we looking at?
Well, we're looking at the sides of the hand. It shows a portion of the back side right here, a portion of the palmar surface right here.
The left side of the right hand that's closest to me.
It's the heel of the right hand,
That's fine.
the part away from the thumb.
The injuries you described, can you detail for the jury what's shown on State's Exhibit 447?
Okay, this shows the palmar surface of the index finger here, and it shows a portion of the palm of the hand. There's a cut that is in there. There's further multiple cuts that are present more clearly on the other side. And then on down here, around the joint region, there's a pattern of parallel cuts, multiple, that extend actually onto the palm surface of the index finger.
Were you able to distinguish in this area the number of cuts that are on?
There's so many, I really couldn't count them accurately.
And State's Exhibit 494, could you describe for the jury what this exhibit shows?
This shows the top surface of the hand. There are a series of multiple parallel cuts that go down into the deeper area of the skin and the area beneath the skin. There's a pattern of parallel cuts that come in here, and there's one more cut that's kind of caught up in the wrinkle of the skin of the fold of the thumb.
And what depth of wound are we talking about, or range of depth of these wounds?
The depth goes down into the connective tissues of the finger. The skin is
You can take your seat back, doctor.
fairly thin on the top surface and moderately thin on the lower surface. And it gets down to the deep tissue that are down there. I don't think that it hit any tendons.
Well, it's more than just a surface cut, is that correct?
It's more than just a surface cut.
Directing you now, doctor, to, well, any other injuries that you found, either on the right arm or the right hand, that of those that we have discussed?
I don't believe so.
Now I want to direct you to the left hand area and the left arm area. I'll tell you what, we will just stick with hand, okay? Did you know any wounds on the left hand of Morris Black?
I did.
Okay, would you describe the location and the nature of these wounds, please, sir?
Again, these wounds are on the top surface of the hand. There's in this web of tissue between the thumb and index finger of the top surface. There's an 1.25 inch long incised wound that goes down to almost through the depth of the skin, but not quite. On the knuckle of the index finger to the right hand, there are 4 parallel, sharply formed incised wounds that go down to this deep dermis area as well.
Are you able to determine, or were you able to determine with any certainty as to when these wounds may have occurred to Mr. Black, either before or after death?
No.
And again, is that the same concerns that you had the first time because of the condition of the body at the time you found it and where it was found?
Correct.
Doctor, I'm showing you what's been marked for identification purposes as 451, 452, 453, 454, and 455.
No objection.
If you would take a look at these and see if you recognize what's depicted.
Yes, sir.
Do these accurately reflect the condition of the hand at the time that you saw it on the left hand?
They do.
When you first observed it?
They do.
The state has tendered and would offer 451, 452, 453, 454, and 455.
Well, there we go. No objection.
You noted there were areas of injury and areas of non-injury, correct?
Correct.
I'm showing you states 451. Just describe for the jury briefly area of injury or non-injury.
This is non-injury. It's the heel of the hand. It shows the top surface and a little bit of the palmar surface on the little finger inside, or little finger side.
And again, we are looking at the left hand.
Correct.
States 452, area of injury or non-injury.
Non-injury. This is the palmar surface of the left hand.
States 453. What does 453 show, doctor?
453 shows the top surface of the hand, specifically around the thumb and the index finger. The flash has kind of washed things out, but there's this there's this long cut of white stuff down at the bottom is the deep edge of the skin. It's almost through the skin at that area. And then over the surface of the knuckle down in here, there's some other white areas that are the deep cuts that are on the surface of the knuckle.
And states 454.
454 shows a little bit more of the side view and demonstrates the cuts on the knuckle more easily. And this is the cut that goes up across the surface of the skin and that web between the thumb and the index finger.
And states 455.
Shows essentially the same thing.
Now, are these cuts in these exhibits that we have just admitted on the left hand, are they parallel to each other? Are they in different locations? Is there any indication along those lines?
They are pretty much parallel to each other.
Now, the cut at the top of the knuckle on the first finger end, is that running parallel with the finger itself or perpendicular?
It's kind of an oblique angle across the axis of the finger. It's coming down across this way.
Let me ask you this then. Are you saying that the cut that's noted here, what is this area again?
I call it
In your terms.
the web.
The web cut, you were saying, is in the same direction as the cut over the knuckle?
Not quite. They intersect at a little bit of an angle, but they are not perpendicular to each other.
Okay, thank you. Doctor, in your profession, have you ever been called upon to determine what we refer to as the angle of entry of a bullet into a body?
Yes,
And have you done that on few or many occasions?
on many occasions.
And when we say many, what number are we talking about, if you have an estimate?
Almost all of the gunshot wounds that I have testified on.
And the number of autopsies you've performed on deaths as a result of gunshot. Any ideas?
Gosh, 600 or 700 maybe? Maybe.
When we talk about angle of entry of a bullet, what are you really able to determine the angle of entry of a bullet? Or are you talking about the angle of the bullet through the body? What are you really doing?
You were tracking the angle or the direction of the bullet as it goes through the body.
And does that ever come into play when you are trying to recreate, perhaps, the positioning of two different people at a shooting?
It does.
And in your external examination of Mr. Black, both the torso and the limbs, did you see any indications of a bullet having entered either his torso right arm, right leg, or left leg?
There's no indications of any bullet track on the body as I examined it.
No entry wounds, no wound of any sort?
No, sir.
When we talk about gunshots, have you seen evidence of gunshot when guns are close to body, relatively close to body when they are discharged?
I have.
And can you tell the jury what you sometimes find in those type of circumstances if a gun is relatively close to a body at the time it goes off?
The muzzle end has a discharge of gases and flame. It's hot. It has burned and unburned gunpowder particles in it. It has soot, black soot. All of these things can be deposited on a body, a skin surface or clothing if the discharge is fairly close to the muzzle end of the gun.
And is there a big $5 word for what you are talking about? What's this stuff called? Is there a word for it? What is stippling? What is that?
Okay, stippling is the impression at the end of the muzzle of particles of gunpowder, usually unburned, that are hurled out of the muzzle end of the gun with such force that they either embed themselves in the skin surface or they strike the skin surface with such force that they create an abrasion on the skin surface. And what you end up with is a pattern of tiny spots that are present. We call that stippling. And the muzzle end of the gun is roughly and generally speaking somewhere within 1 or 2 inches to maybe 18 inches. And it depends upon the caliber of the ammunition that's being used and the length of the barrel. It will vary from gun to gun, to be precise.
In your external examination now of Mr. Black all across his torso, but particularly his torso area from chest down, his arms or his legs, front or back, did you find any evidence of stippling of some gunpowder residue or burns to the skin?
I did not.
I think because this court took a break at this moment, it's a logical point for us to take our break. So let's be ready to go at 10:30. We'll break from now until 10:30. Do not converse among yourselves or with anyone else on any subject connected with this case. Do not form or express any opinion on the case. We're in session. I'm sorry. Our court's in session right now. Yes, Mr. Chesnoff?
I thought this would be an appropriate time to renew our objections to the Galveston evidence and with particularity to the graphic photos that we've raised under all sorts of arguments, including 352. I'm sorry. Including all the arguments we made with respect to 352 being more prejudicial than probative.
You know, I just want to add one thing that has never been brought up before, because at the time, the defense had not indicated what their position was. The court made the ruling, and at the time, we believe it was absolutely the correct ruling. When you look at the status where we are now, they are in essence repeating the identical defense that he used in Galveston. In essence, that Mr. Durst in Galveston, he panicked, he didn't know what to do, no one was going to believe him, so he had to dismember the body. They are now saying with Susan Berman, literally, I found the body, they were never going to believe me, I panicked, and I sent the cadaver note. So not only is it admissible for all the reasons the court said before, but in essence, it's now the identical defense. So if it was relevant and admissible before, it's even more relevant and admissible now. And I would add that the defense writted the court's ruling, and the Court of Appeal, in essence, they postcarded back and said absolutely in their reading between the lines. It wasn't even given, well, it was certainly given consideration. It was found to be a meritless argument.
Well, I think the Court of Appeal may have rightly deferred because there's an adequate remedy at law. I don't think a writ was really an appropriate remedy. But I do believe that there may well be an additional ground for the admission of this evidence, which is to the cases use different language than that which you just used, but and this is spontaneous, and you haven't briefed it for me, but essentially there is another defense, which is to rebut an excuse or That effect. Anyway, it is yet another ground. I considered this carefully earlier. I don't think there's anything about this, the evidence that's been presented that changes to make this relatively more prejudicial. I think it's highly probative for the reason of these facts for which, or the reason, the basis for which it was offered has been briefed, and so I'll again issue the same ruling.
I understood. I just wanted to preserve the record.
Thank you.
We'll just add, Your Honor, that it's in essence, it's
believe
the dog ate my homework.
His position.
It's
Go
the
ahead.
dog ate my homework twice.
Okay. Well, he was also acquitted, so maybe we should just have a collateral estoppel that he gets acquitted on this.
That's
Okay, well,
not
that's it.
demonstrating a real knowledge of law there, Mr.
No,
Chairman.
it's a,
No,
It was very facetious, John.
It's
You know,
meant.
your perception isn't always there.
it is, I think it is a facetious argument.
I just did it for the cameras. Duh.
Oh, okay, you all can smile for the camera. Thank you. If that's what this is.
That wasn't my intention. you know.
All right.
I just, every time we politely do something for the record, Mr. Lewin feels compelled to rehash the entire argument. I think at this point in time, Your Honor, you know, all we're trying to do is protect Mr. Durst's rights.
I don't blame you, but it is interesting that there is yet another legal basis for admission. So, all right,
Thank you, Your Honor.
thank you. Recess.